you to yet another episode of the Unpopular Podcast. It's your boy Jalen. And if you would do me a favor, please subscribe, please share, please comment wherever you're listening to it. If you're not watching on YouTube, come to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. It would definitely mean a lot. But where we'll start is this. What is the one knock? I'm not going to say knock. The one thing that we've been saying for a while now, or for a minute, is Utah is missing one piece, right? You know, last year we remember the duel that they had, or that Utah had with Denver, and we know how good, we've seen how good Donovan Mitchell can be, especially seeing that nobody really saw that coming out of Louisville. And the question is now, is Utah for real? You know, you look at Utah, they have the best record. They're 22-5. They have one of the best defensive teams. And surprisingly, and this is kind of what we'll touch on, they have one of the best offensive teams. Now, the knock on Utah has always been they're a really solid defensive team. I mean, Rudy Gobert, he's two-time Defensive Player of the Year. Even though Donovan Mitchell doesn't really play defense, but they're a solid defensive team. But can their offense keep up with their defense? Saying as though they'll be able to slow down some teams, they'll be able to stop some teams, but can their offense catch up to their defense? Because if their offense caught up to their defense, they'd be an incredible team. And we're starting to see now what happens when their offense catches up with their defense. They're one of the best shooting teams. They're one of the best scoring teams. And, of course, their defense is still top notch. I mean, again, you still have Rudy Gobert, who's incredible. Donovan Mitchell, again, still don't play no defense. But Jordan Clarkson has kind of been playing defense. Mike Conley's been great. Joe Ingles has been good shooting the ball. They're starting to become – they're forming they're becoming a complete team. Now – the question is, are they for real? Yes, I think they're for real. Because like I said, this is a great coach team. They have a star, which is Donovan Mitchell, and they have a co-star, which is Rudy Gobert. Mike Conley's been good. We remember how good Mike Conley was in Memphis, and he's kind of taken of course, he's not the same person that he was in Memphis, but he's taken some of the best parts of himself in Memphis and brought it to Utah. I mean, of course, getting a little older, you know, injuries kind of hit, and he's a little slower, but he's still he's a great player. He's a great, you know, he's a smart player. While he's not going to give you 40, 50 a night, he will make plays. He's like a low-end version of Chris Paul. As in, you know, even though Chris Paul can still score with the best of them, Chris Paul is more revered for how smart he is and his basketball IQ, and that's kind of where Mike Conley is. Now, Utah's for real. Don't get me wrong. Utah's for real. They're a great team, but is Utah a contender? And that is where we'll kind of go from there. I'll say this. While, yes, their offense has caught up with their defense, and they're still an incredible team. Like I said, they're the best team in the league right now as far as record. I don't know if they will be able to beat top-notch teams or top-end teams in the playoffs. Hell, even though they're struggling and they're kind of getting their act together, Denver still have better players than Utah. Okay, and the Lakers still have better players than Utah. The Clippers have better players than Utah. And if you want to go, let's say they make it to the NBA Finals. I don't see them beating a Brooklyn. I don't see them beating a Milwaukee. I don't see them beating. It's just tough because while they do have incredible players and they are the best overall team right now in the NBA. I just don't see them winning when you're going up against firepower such as LeBron James or Anthony Davis or KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. When you're going up against going up against Jokic, you know what I mean? I just don't see it. Now, again, this can all change. They just, and honestly, what it really is I need to see what they do in the playoffs. If they take this team that we're seeing now and bring it to the playoffs, and of course, as we know, the playoffs is a whole nother level. The playoffs is a whole nother beast. If they improve in the playoffs and improve what we're seeing now, then all bets are off. They are the best team in the league right now, and they can be anybody if they improve. If Donovan Mitchell continues to improve, if Rudy Gobert kind of develops an offensive game, like I can see it. But I just don't see it right now as currently constructed because, hell, this is the regular season. And I'm not saying that doesn't matter, but as we've seen, the regular season, hell, look at the 73-9 Warriors. The regular season don't really mean much if you don't win a championship or is competitive in the playoffs. I still need to see how they fare in a series against, I don't know, the Clippers or Denver again or the Lakers. That's kind of what I'm waiting on. But I will give them credit. They have been a surprise to me. And that's where we'll go next. I'm going to give some of the biggest surprises of the season, probably 5 of the biggest surprises and 5 disappointments. Again, the season's probably 2 months in, and it's still early, but we're starting to get a glimpse of what we're going to see for the years for the entire season. Now, again, anything can change. Basketball is a game of runs. A team can get hot. It is what it is, but we're starting to see things that are starting to become trends. And let's start with, I'll save Utah out of it, but Utah has been a surprise for me. Again, we all knew how good they can be defensively, especially last year when they went up against Denver in the playoffs. Like, we know how good they can be. It's just the knock that's always been a knock on them is if their blank catches up with blank. You know what I mean? So, like for instance, if we go back to John Stockton and Karl Malone days, if their defense caught up with their offense, they would be an incredible team. If you look now, we've always talked about their defense, but if their defense catches up with their offense, they would be a incredible team. Well, now we're starting to see that they're starting to catch up with they have caught up with each other, and now they're looking incredible. Now, that is, that's been a huge surprise for me. Another surprise has been Derrick Rose. Shouts out to Derrick Rose, man. It's tough sometimes watching Derrick Rose because you kind of know what he could have been if it wasn't for the injury. And, Derrick Rose is still going to be one of my favorite players ever, seeing as though what he was, especially being the youngest MVP and the athleticism. Derrick Rose is just incredible. But he's been a surprise to me because he is a key part to the NBA right now. What I'm saying is, he was playing, even though they aren't good, and we'll talk about them in a second. He was playing incredible in Detroit, but it's like he was playing so good that they had to let him go. They had to be like, no. And he went to New York, and I think he averaged like maybe 19 or 20 points a game. Like, Derrick Rose has been great. His shot has been good. Derrick Rose is turning into a complete player. Now, of course, his defense still needs to improve a little bit, but he's when you're this late in your career, was he 13, 14 years, it's like you are what you are. So if you're not a defender, you're not going to be a defender. But yeah, man, shouts out to Derrick Rose. He's definitely been a surprise for me. Another surprise, and we just talked about, is the Knicks. Now, adding Tom Thibodeau, that it was kind of like lukewarm. Like, okay, how good are they going to be? Or because we know Tom Thibodeau is one of those coaches that demand everything out of you. He has legendary practices, how hard they go, middle of the season, having full practices. Like, we know that he'll play his stars to the death. Hell, that's one thing that I've always not liked, or I've always kind of looked at them side eye about, as it doesn't matter if it's garbage time. The star is going to be in the game. And that's kind of what happened with Derrick Rose. It was against Philly. They were up like 13 with like a minute left or a minute 30 left. Like, there was no reason for him to be out there, and boom, his Achilles happens. But Yeah, the team has really developed the mentality that Tom Thibodeau brings, and Julius Randle's been good. Emmanuel quickly has been great. Obi Toppin, even though he did deal with some injuries, he's been good. They shipped out Dennis Smith Jr. Like I said, Derrick Rose come in and been a huge spark off the bench. And now I think the report comes out as they're looking to shop Kevin Knox. Like, New York has been a surprise. While I don't think that they are good enough to, I don't know. I don't think they're good enough to make any noise in the playoffs. I do think they are good enough to make the playoffs, how they're playing now. Now, again, we need to see. I think they're like 10 and something. Like, I know we need to see how they move going forward. But, yeah, man, New York has been really good. And even though, again, they still have a losing record, but they have been competitive, and they've been really good. And I think it is, players are getting a little older. Like I said, they were like one of the youngest teams in the league last year and the year before, but they're getting a little older, and the mentality that Tom Thibodeau brings or brought to the team has definitely been incredible. So shouts out to them. Another surprise, and we kind of talk about this a lot, is Philly. Last week I said that Doc Rivers was my coach of the year for right now. And that's because I didn't see Philly being this good with the pieces that they have. I mean, we saw how spotty Tobias Harris looked last year. Of course, we've always been talking about can Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons come together. And, when you lose important pieces like J.J. Redick and everything, as we saw last year, it tends to come back. But, and this, Doc Rivers has been great. Daryl Morey has been good. And you kind of see his offensive mentality come in from Houston now to Philly. He's been great. And then, of course, Joel Embiid is a lot of people's MVP, MVP right now. Ben Simmons has been good. And I think Seth Curry, who is actually one of the biggest reasons, in my opinion, why they have gone to another level, he's on pace. I don't know if he'll do it, but he's on pace to be the first player ever to have a 50-50-90. Of course, we know Steph is in the 50-40-90 club. Malcolm Brogdon was in the 50-40-90 club. But with Seth doing it, Seth has unlocked a lot. Seth has become a better version of what J.J. Redick was for this team. When I say better, J.J. Redick wasn't bringing the ball up. He wasn't playing point like that. With Seth doing that and Seth Curry able, allowing the ball to come out of Ben Simmons' hands and, kind of operating around him and allowing, he's shot so well that you can't just stay off him and double team Ben Simmons or double team Joel Embiid. Philly has been incredible. And Philly right now is a team that could most definitely make it to the championship. And honestly, depending on how they play in the matchup, they can honestly win if they continue to play as they're playing now. So Philly is definitely a surprise. And my last surprise right now is Malcolm Brogdon. Now, Malcolm Brogdon, when you look at his game, Malcolm Brogdon has such a veteran type game, such a smoothness to his game. He's not the most offensively gifted player. He's not the most defensively gifted player. He's not the fastest, most athletic, but he's such a smart player that does the little things. And he can what we're seeing along with him and Sabonis is they're able to take command of a team. And when you look at Malcolm Brogdon's game, it looks like he's been in the league for 10, 15 years. Malcolm Brogdon's on his 4th year in the league. And this is why I believe last week when I did a segment, who will be my all-star predictions, whatever. That's why I had him as an all-star this year. Malcolm Brogdon has been incredible. And the thing about it is I can't take, Malcolm Brogdon, it's kind of hard to describe him. He's a Swiss Army knife. While no, he's not the greatest, he's a utility tool. Let's say that. He's not the greatest screwdriver. He's not the greatest knife. He's not the greatest corkscrew, but he can get it done. he's not the greatest scorer. He's not the greatest defender. He's not really the greatest floor general, but he is so good at everything that having Malcolm Brogdon on your team makes your team instantly better. And he's become a marquee player in the league. When I say marquee, I mean he's become a player that has been vital for his team's success. Look at the net rating that Indiana has when he's on the floor and not on the floor, and the discrepancy is huge. Like, that's how good Malcolm Brogdon's been. So, like I said, some surprises have been Malcolm Brogdon. Philly has been really good. New York, I love how Derrick Rose has been playing. And Utah, again, seeing is because their offense is now caught up with their defense, and now, like I said, they're the best team in the league. And I'm excited to see where they go moving forward. So let's talk about some disappointments. Man, now when I say, look, I was trying to cape. They ain't really no caping. There, these have been disappointments for the season so far. Of course, like I said, anything can change. Some of these teams don't have a bad schedule, but we'll talk about it. One disappointment has been Blake Griffin. It's so crazy how much fit plays into how good you are. Now, I'm not saying it's all Detroit's fault as to why Blake Griffin has been bad, but you bring Blake Griffin on to be your superstar. You bring Blake Griffin on to sell tickets. You bring Blake Griffin on to be your marquee player. When you look today, Blake Griffin is not even the best player on Detroit. That is Jeremy Grant. And no one in their right mind would have ever said, if you look at the career trajectory that Blake Griffin was on, and you look at the career trajectory that Jeremy Grant was on, nobody would say at this moment Jeremy Grant is better than Blake Griffin. And you can't really say it's been injury either, because he's been fairly healthy this year. Blake Griffin just hasn't been good. Hell, I think there's a running stat going on right now. He hasn't dunked this year. Now, I know that you've been like, well, it's just dunk. But when we talk about Blake Griffin, who was known for his high athletic dunks, the fact that he hasn't dunked this year, I don't know if it's because he just doesn't like the environment because they're so bad. I don't know if it's just because he's lost it. I don't know what it is. But Blake Griffin has been horrible this year. And when I say horrible, if you look at the numbers, they're not bad. But the fact that you can look at the NBA and look at the Eastern Conference and be like, oh, shoot, I forgot Blake Griffin was on that team. That to me means that you've done something wrong. The fact that you are a superstar and now you're a forgotten player. Hell, you can look at the league and forget that Blake Griffin is even in the league. I remember watching the game the other day. I think it was Washington against Detroit, and I was like, oh, shoot. Blake Griffin is on his I totally forgot about Blake Griffin. That to me is a failure right there. When I say failure, I'm not saying he's the failure, but I'm saying that has been a huge disappointment this year, because I'm sure that while Detroit isn't good, they expect it to be a lot better with Blake Griffin being there. Another disappointment is Boston. Now, no, Boston doesn't have a losing record. They're not horrible, but Boston is on a mean losing streak. Now, I know, Jason Tatum got hit with some injuries and COVID, and some of the team got hit, but Boston fairly has been healthy this year. And honestly, I'm kind of really looking at you, Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker he's been bad this year. I'm not going to say god awful. He's been bad this year. And I was one of those people saying, okay, well, you lose Kyrie, but you get Kemba. And that's, that can kind of be like an upgrade. It has not. Well, it's kind of been the same. Kyrie didn't do much for Boston, and Kemba isn't doing much for Boston. Now, I will say Jaylen Brown has been really good. Jason Tatum, when he's on the floor, has been good. But Boston as a whole, hell, they just lost by 20. I think 20. No, they were down at least 20, but they lost to Washington by I say 15 points the other night. Now I know it's any given day and any team can win, but Washington ain't one like Washington hasn't been good either, and we'll talk about them in a second. Like it's I don't know if it's Brad. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the scheme Brad Stevens is, because remember Brad Stevens has been Brad Stevens is one of those coaches that we kind of speak highly about, seeing as though he's able to get the best out of his young players. Well, you have a team full of young players, even though they are some, Jason Tatum's a star, Jaylen Brown's emerging as a star, Kimba is considered a star, but I just don't know what it is. They just look horrible. Now, I also do understand that Marcus Smart being out is a huge blow to that team, seeing as though how important he is defensively and his leadership to the team and everything. But even still, even with Marcus Smart out, it's not like Jason Tatum's out. It's not like Jaylen Brown's out. Like they have looked god awful this last maybe week and a half. So, and it's been, yeah, they've beaten some good teams, but they've also looked horrible a lot of the time. So that's why I said Boston's has kind of been a disappointment. Another disappointment is teams have been tanking. Like, I'm looking at you, Minnesota. I'm looking at you, Orlando. I'm looking at you, New Orleans and Detroit. It's like, think about it. There's a difference between being bad in the NFL and being bad in the NBA. And let's look at two teams, for example. Let's look at the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins have been bad for a minute. However, if you look up now, they have a great coach in Brian Flores. They have a future star, a lot of people think, in Tua. They have an incredible defense, especially when we talk about takeaways. They have promising pieces, and they were viable for the playoffs last year. They were in the playoff hunt until maybe the last week or two of the season. They have done tanking right. I'm not gonna say tanking. Well, NFL, they don't like calling it tanking, even though we know it's tanking. They were bad, but they got increasingly better. Look at the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been bad they've been bad since Kevin Love left. And think about it. Look at the players that they have. You have Karl Anthony Towns, who did just come back from, he's had a tough year in 2020, but he did just come back. But you have Karl Anthony Towns, but you've had Karl Anthony Towns. You have D'Angelo Russell. You have pieces, but you're still god awful. And it's like at some point your tanking has to pay off. And I understand that it pays off with players, but those players have to hit. And the organization just has to be better. Hell, look at Orlando. For the longest, they were like, all right, we got Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon's improved. We have Terrence Ross. We remember Mo Bamba, but they just, oh my goodness, they haven't been. They're not good either. Hell, New Orleans, even though New Orleans has some exciting players, you have Zion Williamson. You won a trade where, you got a trade that gave you Lonzo Ball. They give you Brandon Ingram. You have JJ Redick, but they're still bad. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And of course, Detroit. Outside of Blake Griffin and Jeremy Grant, they don't have really much anybody. They have a rookie that I think it's Hayes or something, like Kalen Hayes or something. I don't know who he is. And it's bad when I look up the other day and see that Miles Plumlee or Mason Plumlee or whatever had a triple-double, first career triple-double, and they still lost by like 1,000. Like, it's just, oh man, it's like I get tanking. I understand. If you have a chance to get a franchise player or a player that can change your entire trajectory of your franchise, I get it. But there's only one Steph. There's only one LeBron. There's only one KD. There's only one AD. There's only one player like that, like those players. So it's like at some point you have to understand and you have to realize, all right, look, it might be time for us to. It's like they can't even go all in because it's like it's for at some point in time, the word rebuild has to die. The Miami Dolphins are still in a rebuild, but they're almost out of it. Like the Kansas City Chiefs were kind of in a rebuild until they let Alex Smith go and started what's his name, Patrick Mahomes. Like at some point, the word rebuild has to leave your organization, and for organizations like Minnesota, New Orleans, Detroit, it's just at some point you have to get tired of losing. That's just me. You know what I'm saying? Another disappointment has been Washington. I understand they got decimated with COVID. I understand that, you have new pieces, this, that, and third. Some pieces, like Thomas Bryant went out. I get it. But when you have Russell Westbrook, who, by the way, you traded to get him, and you trade John Wall, who's been really good for Houston this year. But you trade to get Russell Westbrook, and you have Bradley Beal, who's coming off a career year last year, and this year he's having yet another career year. And you're still, the second or one of the worst teams in the league. At some point, and you have talent, like I said, Russ, Beal. You have Rui Hachimura, who's been good. Thomas Bertans. Like, you have talent, but it's just I'm not really one to blame the coach. I think I talked about this last week or a couple weeks ago. I'm not really one to blame the coach, but it doesn't really seem like, I don't know if the scheme isn't there. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like the team is really motivated outside of Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook, he has those days where he's incredible, and he has those days where he's just horrible. So Washington, because I remember going to the season, I felt Washington could be a top, I'll say top 5 team in the East. With Bradley Beal adding to what he did last year, bringing Russ on, a healthy Russ and a motivated Russ from what we heard. And a lot of the pieces that they made and acquired over the offseason, I thought that they'd be one of the best Eastern Conference teams, and they have not. So, hey. And lastly, the last disappointment has been the Mavs. They just lost the other night against Portland. It's like, I never thought I would hear the Mavs don't have enough around Doncic. Like, I didn't think you have a team that has Porzingis. The team does have Tim Hardaway Jr. It does have it has, of course, Rick Carlisle as the coach. I just didn't think that they would be this bad, especially defensively. Like, they're not good defensively, like, at all. And they might be worse. No, because Washington, God, when they turn it off defensively, it's off. So I don't know. It's just, Blake Griffin's been bad. Boston, they need to kind of pick it up. At some point, the rebuilding teams need to get rebuilding out of their bio, and I don't know, teams like Minnesota or Orlando, they have no, I don't know when that's going to happen. Washington has been horrible, even though they have Bradley Beal, who is one of the top shooting guards in the league, and Russell Westbrook, and then, of course, the Mavs. So those have been some of my surprising teams. Those are surprises, let's say, of the season, and those have been some of my disappointments. Let's move forward. So a report came out yesterday saying that Cleveland plans on sitting Andre Drummond, and that they want to bring they want to give more minutes and kind of nurture Jarrett Allen, and so that kind of what more than likely he's getting traded. In fact, it's a little more than likely, but Andre Drummond's getting traded. And where are a couple places? I'm gonna just give 3 places where I think he'll be really good at. One, of course, the biggest one would be Brooklyn. He will definitely help, because I was one of the people to think, well, you bring on, you pretty much decimate your bench, and your 2 best defenders, which was Jared Allen and Taurean Prince, You send them away for James Harden. I knew they were going to struggle defensively, but I was one of the people to say, hey, you still have a really good rim protector in DeAndre Jordan. Boy, oh boy, was I wrong. DeAndre Jordan is not that anymore. All he is lobs, catch lobs. That's it. And while Andre Drummond isn't the most defensive player in the league, I do think that bringing on Andre Drummond will definitely help, especially when we talk about rim protecting. It will definitely help Brooklyn. Now, I think Andre Drummond is one of the best rebounders in the league, and he's not the greatest rim protector, but he's pretty good at it. A lot better than DeAndre Jordan. So I think that bringing anybody on, especially at that position, would help. So I think, of course, Brooklyn. I got Washington. Losing Thomas Bryant definitely hurt them. Now, that'd be crazy. That's crazy that I'm saying that losing Thomas Bryant really hurt. And don't get me wrong, shouts out to Thomas Bryant. He's been really good. But Andre Drummond alongside Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook definitely will help. And not to mention, Andre Drummond will give Alex Lynn's on the team, okay. But they'll give Washington some height. And because Alex Lynn and Bertans is like the tallest players, but they're not defensively. They're not doing much. So, and Washington's one of Washington's biggest deficiencies is defense. So I think that Andre Drummond would be great for Washington. And lastly, Golden State. I know you have James Wiseman, but James Wiseman is out with a sprained wrist. Outside of James Wiseman, you don't really have much on the at the center position. And while he isn't good, he's not a good shooter and he can't really take them outside of the paint. Golden State can still operate with a traditional big. You play him off some incredible pick and rolls with Steph Curry. I'm sure Draymond Green can get him open somehow. Like, or not get him open, but they can work together pretty good. I think that, and I think he'll be good alongside James Wiseman. Not saying on the floor at the same time, but I do think that he can be good at nurturing James Wiseman to be better at a paint score. Now I'm not saying he should play more than James or play over James Wiseman, but I think that Andre Drummond would be good in Golden State. So the three best places I have for him right now was Brooklyn, Washington, and Golden State. That's another team, man. Cleveland kind of got off to a fast start. Darius Garland was good. Colin Sexton was really good and had his moments, but they've kind of come back to reality. And you have Jared Allen on the team. Kevin Love should be coming back soon, which I still don't see why he hasn't been traded, but Kevin Love should be coming back soon. I don't know the direction that Cleveland's going in. I really don't. I don't, because not only that, like, Colin Sexton is not taking you over the top. Darius Garland is not taking you over the top. Kevin Love at this point in his career is not taking you over the top. Jared Allen is not taking you over the top. Like, and of course you still have Andre Drummond. You're about to sit him and more than likely trade him. So I don't know what's going on with Cleveland, but it is what it is. Moving forward, we talked about last week. College basketball is down, and let me say this: men's college basketball is down. Women's college basketball is kind of doing its thing. Shouts out to UConn. They look incredible. South Carolina still looks incredible. The usuals when we talk about women's college basketball are looking really good. Of course, the inconsistency that is college basketball right now as terms of scheduling and who you're going to play, who you're not going to play, which game's going to get canceled, which game is not. I understand. But moving back to the men's side, the seeding kind of, the mock seeding, whatever, came out last week. And the top four or top four regional number one seeds, they're not really, we kind of knew who it would be, which was Gonzaga, who was overall number one, Baylor, Michigan, and Ohio State. While college basketball has been inconsistent, those four have been the most consistent. Even though to me, Gonzaga and Baylor in a class of their own, and then it's everyone else. So I was gonna talk about what dark horses could upset them. Now there are some teams that could upset them. Now, usually when we talk about dark horses, we'll talk about teams that might not be in the top, I don't know, 10. Talk about teams that probably close to the 20 or 15 to 20 range. Maybe a team the last in, or, those are usually dark horses. However, this year, I don't see anybody outside the top 10. Like, I think the March Madness will be hellish. Like, I don't see any upsets except for maybe like 4 beating 5 or 8 beating 10 or something like that. Or 10 beating 8. I don't see many upsets as far as like huge upsets. I don't really see that. And I don't really see, and when I say upsets, I mean the top 4. I don't see really anybody beating the top 4. However, when I do say dark horses, I think Texas Tech, Matt McClung and those, I think they can make some noise. I don't think they can beat Gonzaga. I definitely don't think they can beat Baylor. I think they can give Michigan and Ohio State a run, but I don't know. I think Texas is incredible when it comes to shooting the ball. Now, Texas is live by the 3, die by the 3. Oh, no, let me say this. Live by their offense, die by their offense. If their offense is on fire, they're damn near unstoppable. If their offense is not, however, they are horrible. So, I'm not going to say horrible, but they're definitely beatable. And they're like I said, their defense kind of thrives on how good their offense is. And Virginia is a confident team, and Virginia has one of the best defensive team, or is one of the best defensive teams in all of college. Now, of course, like everyone else in college basketball, they have been a little turbulent as far as wins and losses. Just like what Villanova has kind of been turbulent as well. But I don't really see a dark horse this year. As far as I don't see a Loyola, whatever, beating a big team, or I don't see I don't see a blue blood really making, except for maybe Michigan, making noise. So yeah, man, it's just been a tough year for college basketball. It really has, and it shows. It shows. But moving forward, is there anything I want to talk about basketball? I don't really think so. Let's move forward. So the Texans released J.J. Watt, and it wasn't like a J.J. It was J.J. Watt's been saying for a minute now he wants to. Well, this year been saying that he wants to leave. We know the turmoil that's going on with Houston, all the Houston sports, the Astros, the Rockets, and the Texans. We know the turmoil that's going on, and J.J. Watt is just the latest of stars leaving or getting out of Houston. Now, first let's talk about who is J.J. Watt right now. J.J. Watt was on a trajectory to be one of the best defensive players we've ever seen. Like, he was that good. J.J. Watt, there was kind of like how Aaron Donald is right now. He was one of those players that we didn't have to question who was the best defensive player in the league, because it was J.J. Watt. It was always going to be J.J. Watt. That's just how good he was. The way that he played, the aggressiveness, the determination to be great, J.J. Watt's been that good. He was that good. Again, there was a huge argument as how good is J.J. Watt, and he was on a trajectory to be in that Lawrence Taylor class of some of the greatest we've ever seen play the defense. However, injuries hit that man hard, man. From leg injuries to bicep injuries to injuries have hit J.J. Watt hard. And that kind of brings me back to brings me to here. Now, J.J. Watt is still one of the best. Let me say this. J.J. Watt is still a really good defensive player. And when healthy, J.J. Watt is still a higher energy player and can definitely help a team win. Now, J.J. Watt, again, is not the player that he used to be. And his prime is definitely behind him. And injuries definitely robbed him of a couple prime years. But the Texans, people are asking, why did the Texans release him but keep Deshaun Watson? Because they know Deshaun Watson is top 5 in his position. J.J. Watt is not. Deshaun Watson is still a franchise changing player. He's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Hell, the Texans were horrible last year, and Deshaun Watson had one of the best statistical years ever last year. Like that's just how good Deshaun Watson is. It's easy to let go of J.J. Watt because the best years of J.J. Watt is definitely behind him. Now, J.J. Watt is kind of more of a fan favorite right now, as far as we know the philanthropy and all the great stuff he did in Houston. He's one of Houston's best athletes as far as ever in all of Houston. When we look at Houston sports, you look at Akeem Olajuwon, you look at James Harden, honestly, you look at T-Mac, and now you're going to, when you look at talk about football, you got J.J. Watt, Andre Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, Deshaun Watson now. Those are some pillars when we talk about Houston and talk about how great they've been. Terry Porter's up there. Now, J.J. Watt is out. People aren't mad because it's like, oh man, you left a good player. You let a good player leave. No, they're mad because he's a fan favorite. But with that being said, where does J.J. Watt go? I'll give 3 teams again, like I did Andre Drummond. I'll give 3 teams. Green Bay. We know Green Bay needs consistency when it comes to stopping the run and getting to the quarterback. And at his best, and even some time last year, J.J. Watt was still really good at that. And I think that it'll just add, to Green Bay needs a lot of pieces as far as offensively, but they do also need some defensive pieces, and that's why I think J.J. Watt will definitely help. Another person would be Kansas City. I know the rich getting richer. It is what it is, but as we saw in the Super Bowl, Kansas City needs another defensive interior lineman because and I understand J.J. Watt's not that, and I know the position J.J. Watt plays. For the people that's coming at me for my for the people that's coming at me and really killing me for my Aaron Darnold take. I messed up. I know he's a defensive end. I know he's not a linebacker. I know I messed up. My fault, guys. Jesus Christ. But with J.J. Watt, I think being in a system that Kansas City has, especially defensively, I think that he'll thrive. Not to mention, one reason why they let J.J. Watt go is because they know he deserves a place to win. He deserves a chance to win, and he knows, especially next year. And I think Texans know, too, especially next year. They don't really have you're wasting his years because you don't have no type of avenue to win outside Deshaun Watson. And that's even turbulent if he's going to be there. So Kansas City, and of course Pittsburgh. That's the team we've been hearing about, joining his brother T.J. Watt, his other brother who plays on the offensive side of the ball too. But we know that losing Bud Dupree to injury and probably he might get cut due to salary reasons. Bringing on a J.J. Watt will definitely help improve the defense and help improve playing alongside his brother. So, I am interested to see where J.J. Watt lands, and there are some teams. He's still a serviceable player, and he's still a good player at his best. It's just, I think it's time for him to get into the right system that can work for him, because there were years when, again, he was on a trajectory to be one of the greatest defensive players ever, except for until injury hit. So, I'm excited to see where J.J. Watt goes. Moving forward, another big story last year was what's going on in Jacksonville as far as their coaching staff. So, Chris Doyle, for people that don't know who Chris Doyle is, Chris Doyle was an assistant coach that coached at Iowa, I believe. And I think he might have been a strength and conditioning coach, one of them. But he was he was on the coaching staff for Iowa, and multiple players. And I mean, it ain't just two or three, like multiple players that are African American came out and said that Chris Doyle was racist. His practices were intense, and he was insensitive to racial issues and insensitive to racial players, especially African American players. And he was pretty much a racist, is what we heard. And because of those allegations, that's the reason why he was fired from Iowa. Now, I'm not sure why. I do know why. Chris Doyle has a relationship with Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, for people that don't know, is a legendary coach in college. And everywhere he's gone, from Florida to Ohio State, has won great. And now he is the head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But let me say this. Urban Meyers hired Chris Doyle, who, by the way, like I said, has a reputation of being a racist. Hired him to the coaching staff. Now, this set everyone like, players were confused, because this information isn't like this information is widely available. Like, you can Google Chris Doyle, and that's the first thing that pops up is his allegations. And honestly, he didn't even like come out and say, no, these allegations are true. Like, it's kind of tough getting fired from a college. I'll tell you that. Like, and he did. So, but Urban Meyers hires him. And of course, this sets the internet ablaze. Again, players from Jacksonville Jaguars were confused. Players from outside the league were confused. Everyone was confused. And this led to Chris Doyle accepting the job, then resigning from the job like the same week. Actually, this happened like a couple days. But why am I talking about it? Because this just shows how far the league is in terms of equality. You have people like Todd Bowles, Eric Bieniemy, that have Brian Leftwich have outstanding resumes. Hell, honestly, even though he didn't win any playoff games, you can even throw Marvin Lewis in there. You have African American coaches with outstanding resumes. Oh, I'm sorry. I said coaches. African American coordinators with outstanding resumes. Yet and still, they don't get hired. Or a report comes out and says they interviewed badly, which I will say this again. I don't understand how you can interview badly when all you're supposed to be doing is going in and telling them what you plan to run and how you plan to connect with your your players or whatever. I don't see how that can be interviewed badly, but I digress. But coordinators with outstanding resumes that are African American don't get jobs, or don't get head coaching, or get jobs in the NFL. Yet and still, Chris Doyle, who is known to be racist, in fact, that's his reputation, to be racist, gets another job, or gets a job in the NFL over great candidates that are African American. It just shows. And then, it's part of the NFL because the NFL, like I said, the NFL. This is the culture that you brought. The culture of the players can be black. Yeah, we'll give a black player. Yeah, I mean, you are indebted to the owners control the league, and if I and I get it though. Like I understand the Rooney Rule, and which is a joke, but I understand if I'm a billionaire and I run a team, I'll be damned if I let the league tell me what to do with my team and my money. Which is why the Rooney Rule is so broken. Because there's no way you can tell me that an owner of a team who I have to hire. Which is why the Rooney Rule is so broken. But it's also why the league will always be held back. And the league will always be, it'll look like one shade when we talk about coaching. Because if I'm an owner, if I'm a white owner, why do I have any desire to hire an African American if I can just hire someone that I'm cool with? And more than likely, the person I'm cool with is white. It's just bad. And then, like I said, for Urban Meyer, I'm not calling Urban Meyer racist or anything, but for Urban Meyer to be this tone deaf, especially in a time like this, and hire somebody like Chris Doyle, it just shows you really just how far we are as a society, especially in the NFL, seeing as though a coach like Chris Doyle can get a head coach. I mean, can get can get on a coaching staff. Yet and still, African Americans with better resumes than head coaches have to claw and fight to get any recognition. It's crazy. And lastly, moving forward, Trevor Lawrence's pro day was last week, and he looked incredible, like usual. He looked incredible. The ball was coming out fast, quick, and in a hurry. He looked accurate. I mean, we know who Trevor Lawrence is. He's been number one since he's been projected a number one pick since he got into college. And I want to end on this. Usually, usually you're only you're as good as the environment that you're put in. There are some players that I feel would have case in point. Look at Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill was god awful in Miami, but now we see how good he is in Tennessee. There are some players that you're really only as good as where you're drafted or what organization you're in. Hell, that's what we talk about. Jared Goff is going to fall off a map because Jared Goff wasn't the best in LA with Sean McVay, a good offensive line and really good pieces around him. So what do you think is going to happen when you go to Detroit that has nothing? So usually it's you're really, they're talented players, but you're really only as good as the coaching staff that's around you, especially NFL. You're only as good as the coaching staff around you and the organization that you're in. Then there are some players that you look and it's like, they'd probably be good wherever they went. Andrew Luck was one of those people. Andrew Luck did have, I don't know if you remember the Colts before Andrew Luck and that period a little after his rookie season and a little after Peyton Manning, but they weren't that good. I don't know if you remember the Patriots before and now after Tom Brady. What I'm saying is there's some players that it doesn't matter where they go, they will be good. You see that a lot more with the NBA than anywhere else. LeBron James could have got drafted anywhere. Hell, Cleveland wasn't good. Hell, we see who Cleveland is without him. Dwight Howard was a godsend for Orlando. what's his name? Steph Curry was a godsend for, Golden State, because he would have been good anywhere. Kevin Durant would have been good anywhere. He just landed the second overall pick for the Supersonics, now Oklahoma City. Trevor Lawrence is starting to look like one of those players that it doesn't matter where you're drafted, he will be good. He just has those intangibles. I could be wrong, and a lot of the scouts could be wrong too, because a lot of people are saying this as well. But Trevor Lawrence just has, he has the pocket awareness. He has the cannon of an arm. He has incredible accuracy. He has the IQ, especially being, this young. Like Trevor Lawrence, it's crazy when you look at some analysts are right. I'm not saying they're always right, but there's usually players, like for instance, look at Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron Rodgers was coming out, there was a lot of analysts that said, Aaron Rodgers can be incredible. He can be one of the best. But then there are also analysts that say, well, hold on now, you still have so and so. Aaron Rodgers is Alex Smith. There's usually always opposing analysts or opposing commentators or something. I haven't heard one person oppose Trevor Lawrence, and that's kind of how I haven't heard one person. I didn't hear one person oppose for Andrew Luck, and honestly, Andrew Luck can still be playing. It's just he retired early because they couldn't help him. So I don't know how good Trevor Lawrence can be, but Trevor Lawrence is starting to look like one of those players. Now, again, I understand he hasn't even stepped foot in the league yet. I understand, what happened especially last year. I understand what happened against Ohio State, this, that, and the third. But Trevor Lawrence looks like one of those players that has all the intangibles to be great. And I'm just excited to see what happens. I'm excited to see what he's going to do in a, Jets jersey, or if somebody makes a trade, whatever jersey he goes to. So, or a Jaguars jersey or something like that. But there you have it. I appreciate you guys for listening. I appreciate you guys for watching. Appreciate you guys for being here. It definitely means a lot. Again, I hope that you please subscribe to the channel and, like, comment, whatever. Even if you disagree, comment, let me know. We'll talk about it. I ain't got no problem conversing with you guys. If you guys want some Unpopular podcast merch, the link is in the description below. I have a lot of products, so go get that. And yeah, man, I appreciate you guys. I really do. And until next time, much love.